Okay. Well, yeah, it's yes. This, that's I don't know if that's close to which over the mile, but number five. Let's say a formal is the president. I don't speak. That's the first. That is that's like morning. Seaside, one morning, one morning. It's total. There's that. It's Yes. And like ice cream. Thanks for straight. Doesn't I swear. Straight. Regular. Getting your this kind so song. It's a song. Yeah, which is important. Hey friends, good morning. Being from home. Down from home. I said I never put it that's the song. It's about trying to talk about. It's hard. Yeah. We have one here. No, no, we already have one. Okay. Wow. Turn it off. Yeah. Of course. Can you hear? Okay. Good morning. Here. I hear myself. No, it must be working. Let's be close. There you go. Oh, I'm gonna spend the moment. Okay. We're glad you're here. If you haven't got a chance for please for the seniors at home. Bathrooms are through this. We're doing here, the housekeeping. We'll go ahead and get started. House for those who don't remember. I'm going to go through the agenda really quickly because the agenda is very much really wrong. Pretty early tonight. Right. But we're gonna go through this thing today. First, we're gonna go over just subcommittee meetings that we had. Thank you all for those who attended. That was super good, and we all had where I'm thinking all about that. We're gonna go over the criteria that is generated in those subcommittee. We're gonna have a general discussion with them, and just that everyone can see what the others were doing. We were doing our those targeted. We're going to talk about whether or not those criteria need to be weighted in this way for the processing of pollution projects. And then we're going to talk about how we would present them, whether we group them or we keep them in their strips of the committees. And then we're going to talk about our public meetings. And there's we hope to all participate in that with us. So, we're going to switch it. So this first. Okay, thanks for helping me work this part of the presentation. So this is where we're going to go over the criteria that's created in the various subcommittees. So what should we do is we just read them out loud. Should we? You're gonna watch.
I did want to back up real quick and talk about what we're doing with these breaking laws and how so the big picture is that what we're accomplishing is creating, analyzing, prioritizing industries. So the way we're doing that is we've broken down over submarines, somewhat related to groups, see quite a bit of that now. And talked about what the criteria are for each of those four areas: river, land, and circulation connections, archaeology, preservation, control. So what we've got on the screen here with all of these, and this is very much an open discussion because what you're going to see here are our summaries of what we heard in those four subcommittees. And we're not not either, so we're expecting to get some feedback. There's something that wasn't captured quite accurately. There's rework. Okay, so once we processed all of that stuff, we've got all of these criteria. That is going to be the fuel for our first public meeting. The guiding principles we've talked about in the first couple meetings, and then all of these criteria, we're going to take those to the public and say, here's what we think are important things for projects to have in the market. This is what staff should consider. This is what funders should consider. What do y'all think? So asking the public, they get a chance to say, hey, there's a guiding principle that you should have completely left out. They can say, this criteria, just I don't think this makes a whole lot of sense for Tom. Or they can say, this is really important, that's not. And we'll talk about that a little bit. So I guess we can just go through these and through this.
Yes. So read them and everybody can consider and give feedback. Don't feel shy, but I'll read through them quickly and then we can. Not that you can. Those project maintaining this area through the project increase Does the project preserve and improve or improve river ecology? Does the project preserve improve river behavior? Does the recreation project negatively impact ecology? Does the project restrict access to river for geothermal connections? Does the project include low impact development strategies? And does the project replace habitat that's being lost in other areas? So you'll notice the last two are lines have land system. Those also came up in the land groups. We're just showing kind of the thoughts. Did we capture it? Just very high.
What is the historic area? It's a good question.
That's a good question. I mean, it's very, the historic character of the river is, kind of an evolutionary. So it's not like, in preservation, we, a lot, like, 2.1 days and say, the river is historic because of how it looked in 1868, right? But we know that the river has been active and used for centuries, longer than that, millennia. So
how does the project take Oh, I'll take it right. I think the reality is we've got 24 hours right now, for example, stories, interviews, meetings, natural. We're going to stretch there, and that's all I care. I think without a different anger to value to be find the characters, you know, those things between was knowledge of this results that I'm speaking to. The Bible key and was in the areas which ways it's true. I think those areas are relatively clear when the way it's phrased is maintain historic character. I think it's kind of the duality of those points. We've got a whole river still in here, but we've also got a lot of folks interested. I like there. Later areas that get channel on, strained through our history. And that is what we have to sort of today. And then there are more natural areas that are in distress, that are seeing significant erosion, threatened by development that have occurred in and around those areas. So trying to meet that balance of and preserving those, trying to bring nature into balance through some design features to keep the river flowing as it most naturally states. It's forested in particular. Significant tools in some areas that are further erosion along the fence. Endangering some roads, other things that people noise today. All that though also people have the interested in hearing more than the subcommittee themselves. Yeah, same. I guess. Well, could it be just problematic statement? I don't know how to respond to it.
The other say that, and you would have something like that, I think it's the opposite not. Take, I know it not. I walk over falls. The other handle thing that goes down. I don't think.
I think putting back the moment is very different. But I think that's the only way I can see how into that statement.
And if I could just have you just say your name and who you're with, that will help give folks context, and have Brian here from the River Authority first.
Hi, I'm Suzanne Scott with the Nature Conservancy. How about something like, does the project maintain the historic role of the river in the character and appreciation of the park? In other words, instead of talking about the historic character of the river, it's really the historic role that the river has played in the park over time. Just suggestion, something like that. Because the river, has evolved over the history of it. And I think even the cultural landscape report recognizes that had changed over time. But it has always had a historic role in the river, in the park. And the other thing I wanted, and I know this is splitting hairs, but the question I wanted to ask is on the use of sort of the ecology. You can have bad water quality and still have good ecology. So I'm wondering if we need to talk about that, the idea of preserving water quality and river habitat, something, because again, I've always, in my years at the River Authority, you can have bad water quality and still have, fish, other things that are surviving, not to say they're native, but there are more pollution tolerant fish, but it's not native. Anyway, those are just a couple of comments. It's a great talk.
It's like Vanaway, but with a micro.
Yeah, that's all good here.
Well, with the first question, I feel like bogging down a little bit on semantics with the definition of historic character. And maybe it's just the arrangement, like you said, maybe that question goes to the bottom because all those below it form that question. When you're going through projects, you're looking at access to river, the ecology and river recreation, are we at the end, we look at all those projects and then we say, is this consistent with the historic character of the river? So I feel like it's more interest is like this.
Yeah, we can kind of prioritize just in specific order, but I understand the point that it could be interpreted that way. I think that makes it more important the order to go public, and to have some of these snowy answers. Especially the state says we have to. That's going to be important for us to know. But I think that especially to take this out in the public, we need the words we choose them. Absolutely.
I also think that, the river's obviously very involved. The history of the river ball and its played all city historically. It's very a very important, you know, subject that you can't de-emphasize either. By trying to hide it someplace else, because in my opinion, it wouldn't be no harm about the river. So I'd hate to like kind of lose that. That's really.
Yeah, I really like to return to something serious, thinking what's really the better half by when it's trying to cause this. What you do, I think does it's really explorers. It's not like the character of the river, the story believing the river is quick. I think it's and okay.
Yeah, I think that's important. I think there are also historic pieces of the river, which probably will be attached to that community, that's what is the community. Maybe that's captured from theology and from history as well. But the piece focus more on the specific river. But I don't disagree with anything that was said. Like, I think there's a way we can rework this where it still has the impact of being.
I don't know actors. I wanted to also say, I think she said it's going to really get the point about water quality. And that's an ongoing issue. And with the wars times, water quality gets lost. It's not that ecologically water quality is not something they're necessarily tracking. So I agree on this. Lifetime river ecology.
Yeah, I think that's what Suzanne's just was modifying the river called ecology. Anything else about river? That we can probably stay on this call. Archaeology and architecture, which is a committee. Three committees really quickly. The project enhance the public's comprehensive understanding. Does the project enhance the interpretation of the water story of the park? Does the project unify areas of thought? Can building be adapted to increase longevity? Is the project accessible for public use? Does the project enhance understanding and interpretation of habitation? Did we capture? With the language.
Just, I guess the question really is about the preservation of the historic features. Would that fall here?
It does fall here. We kind of didn't address that because those were taking a lot of time anyway. I was like, so we were kind of, well, that's yeah, depending on, because of the designation that the park comes with, all of the structures when they become parks products that they those adaptations have to be preserved to the sort of standard bioactivities. So we kind of did not get that specific. Maybe we can make a note about that.
I guess I would leave, deal to Shannon as far as if she feels that should be, a question to be asked and answered through the just already, and so it doesn't need to be in this.
It's a good question.
And good note for public outreach that should be communicated in some way and posted.
That's just what I was going to say. I mean, when you bring this to the public, you need to be sure they understand that.
That's the statement, right?
For one thing, it would waste time. They would be saying, but what about?
Exactly.
But also just make things clear.
I agree. Great. Lori.
I don't understand. Can the building be adapted to increase longevity?
I think that we were thinking about You know, is there, just thinking about how uses, you know, when a building's incorporated in project. This is making sure that it's not being used for the original use, you know, it's being used for proposed for. A decade, maybe there's a way to reword that, because that's taking time. Implication. What? The building. To make sure it's, you know. For the next 300 years.
I mean, they got the culvert. It'll never.
It's not gonna be a problem, right? But once it's not used. It needs to be used to, it's not occupied, it's not maintained.
I will say, Robert, I think we may, if you have another more things continue, that one, let's be strict. It's Agnes house for students. I think that was particularly difficult want, we have a whole lot of permission. Design to we may find that some of these are things that are important, but they're not necessarily things that can be quantified in a way. And a project that has the customers could that put them down.
And the theory that it's not being. Would know that they have a cow use in the city, even if maybe this is direct or in the city, this is kind of the market of communicating the different street, the buildings that are. Not necessarily out, that's the point.
Did they don't say it? Be adapted for longevity. So parking garages, they can be built now to where they can be converted to an office building. Or something, you know. So if there comes a time, you know, we have electric cars, driverless cars, there might be no time where a garage might actually become office space. That could be repurposed to some sort of recreation building or park.
Yeah, that's great, great information.
Construction. Because some of them are just fairly buildings that maybe hit them. And then can you clarify the last part of interpretation of habitation of the park that human habitation?
I think we kept it broad so that it could be. All things.
If I'm starting a project and I look at this, say, okay, well, what is coverage understanding of the park? How do I activate that data is what I'm trying?
I think that this was. I think that it was not that there's a lack of the public's understanding of the overall history and use of the park, and so maybe this is about interpretation. I think that was the point. So making sure that interpretation gets included.
I just don't see how I can hand it, but I don't understand. Or they don't understand.
Right, I mean, the goal would be to be an interactive stuff, what it is. We probably see.
Well, if you're trying to hand it to the person,
Right.
So it sounds like first we need establishing. Right, kind of establishing the understanding of furniture is that what we're in that another baseline.
I think that also came out, in our committee, if I'm not mistaken, was taking a look at all the archaeological studies that have been conducted here. Bring them together, making sure that we're all of all the integrated.
That's the 50 building. Right. It's all different. The different governments we talking about Julie the Alliance. Speaking of building there, it has a collective. Or you can look at the live example or
I would say, and this kind of goes back to Suzanne's question earlier on. Do you think it makes sense to begin this assessment with an understanding that, a stated understanding that the archaeology and historic architectural features are important and the default is that they should be preserved and then go into the questions because with that, the answers to the questions might be confusing.
That's great. That's good. There you go. Okay, should we move on? This is not the last school.
We'll say a part where it's talking about the one page for a little bit. It's probably not terribly so. What you think? So, questions. Break this down. We need to get more generally that the values, the problems, around this. Because that's questions. Okay, land. A lot of them on the river, naturally. So it's crying the natural uses by incorporating native plant materials. Is based on the versions are, but we need just the project of natural ecology and culture of the Brackenridge process. To the project incorporate low impact development features. Does the project include long-term maintenance planning and funding for caring for the natural components of the microbials, particularly does the project enhance the availability of parking space? Does the project increase the amount of the natural area? And finally, does the project interpret and educate? Comments, thoughts, criticisms.
Routine.
Maybe I'm trying to wait one of this day. Just as you read those questions, sort of be, do we know the answers to all those questions in detail? If we go look more on the recitation, do we know? It's not just yes or no, it's my sense. The answers to all the questions.
Well, so the question that you're afraid in the way to evaluate those projects, so these will be different than rooms. Yeah, don't we know what's good and what's bad? First questions. Yes.
Explicitly, yes. Yes.
So that's the point that we're going to get to in Dr. Regard's board.
Carrie with First T. Can you explain what low impact development features mean?
Yes, that's a technical term. It's basically ways of developing which reduce the impact of that development land. Specifically, it's take care of specific ways which the nature without water or letters. It's just this best practice projects should. So again, that's a very technical thing. That's not something you will say in the project. Hey, should the projects incorporate new features? The question, the answer to that one in particular is yes. Especially there's a lot of like which anyways fits in the nature of
bring it to a conflict, need a fear, that channeling it safe.
yeah, that's very
And then for the first one, I wonder if that can be in term four for maybe invasive species. Instead of just and, that there may be an opportunity for something that doesn't have anything right now to just incorporate a plant material. There may be some projects where it doesn't make sense to add plant material, like putting in a parking garage, but it's a, big law and maybe for something. It's just, I didn't know if that should be a hand or.
Yeah, I think it's good.
Sure.
Stop. Okay, let's- It makes dollars, that's so unnatural. So non-native, so the every, um, sorry. So, what's. So it's really the effort here is to think this holds that in a general sense, really our ways just their projects. It's just to cultural waste. It does as well, there are these issues. One of the by the project. So doesn't it? I mean, current words and wide funding travel. Whether it's just it's changed. And I would say we would use this criteria that it's just the way we always know any promotion, right? The criteria were typically to be flexible and to evaluate both expectations.
On the second one, would we be open to say, does the project promote or enhance natural ecology in concert with recreation access and use? For example, if we wanted to increase native fish so that people could have a more a better fishing experience in the park, would we want to have, do things that create habitat in the river to make the fish populations healthier. Just so does it promote and enhance the natural ecology in concert with recreation access and use?
Makes sense to me. I think we need to just say enhance, say the point of that is just make it better.
Suggest greater, just like that, comments, one class and second class on the project increase around the natural area as well, just defining what that is for everyone that might be something else. Open space, whatever. Probably discussion. Define that, make sure it's. At least it's a factor.
And I think for that, there's the last one, does the project enhance the availability of park open space? I think in our committee, we're talking about access versus availability. But I think, please correct me if I'm wrong for that.
Yeah, I think it makes sense to reword just the project enhance the enhance the well, so I think there's this back up. There was a trend in making space from code, which is currently restricted. It brings it to which is which games. If the names would move on to transform, then it's the course using the it's the now it's
Space. Maybe
Is a trigger, right?
open space could, some people might think that's a soccer field.
I think you're right. when on the lane, we were king more soccer fields and it was more, so. Maybe enhanced availability of. Natural space or native spaces, or something, but open space. In my mind, I'm thinking sports fields, you know, it's T-ball fields, yeah. So I think that could be a slippery slope if we maintain open space. We want to preserve the natural space. Maybe.
And it's just, anyone else on the west of Korea, I mean, she's without.
Hey, Jane, you said something earlier, and I know we'll go back, but was the river supposed to deal with the hydrology issues?
Yes.
Because I didn't see anything in that regarding public safety.
What would you think something like that would be open areas?
Well, I mean, you know, the river still has a function to convey floodwaters in a safe manner, right? I mean, it still has to do that even in parks, so, I mean, I'll leave it up. I don't know what the committee said, but I would think if the river, I just remember in the meeting that prior, that we were saying the river was gonna address the hydraulics, and any function of the river from a public safety perspective. So I would suggest that we add something that it doesn't, that the project that's being contemplated does not impede the role of the river in its flood conveyance role, or its public safety role, or something to that effect for flood safety in the big park.
Possible project. It could be nice.
Oh, sure.
Right. So yeah, it's something we don't really stay.
Thing like, particularly the long-term maintenance planning and funding, like understanding or. And so as we're adding features, looking at projects, like does, just like Suzanne was saying, is this impeding or does it help athletic function? So that actually came up more in land.
So they come out of its banks, I mean, you know, do that in the park. It just, you know, to make sure that nothing we're doing is going to cause more flooding downstream in River Road, upstream, and up, you know, you've got to make sure that you look at it from its place in the watershed.
Thank you.
Well, related to that, there is another project going on. That the is in charge of along with Sarah. And I think what we might do is have some language that talks about interacting with that. Something it's not specifically within the scope of this effort, but it's certainly tied to it. So something that addresses that relationship. Might be helpful.
I guess for because these criteria have to be sort of generally useful. That seems like a pretty specific extremely to a project. It's something that in terms of that doesn't have it linkage before is doing. Like, is there a way to generalize that concept?
Well, I call it constant.
Could you understand it?
Yeah, however, that's I think that long, but thinking about eyeball, like all that, it's something that is currently me. But it's close already. So, all I'm saying is, as part of this effort, there's language there that forces that, complements it.
Reinforces the best.
then going back to the river, and I think, again, to them, no, earlier, and I think that may be an opportunity there to include like a core role is for lunch. Or like, that's what that might be, so I think adding that to the role. And then it keeps coming in my brain, and I don't know where to put it or necessarily how to phrase it, but I think it again, aligns with that, is like, for one topic disproportionately impact the number or the role of the river or the ecology. I don't know where that will land, but I think that this work would be something that needs to have kind of criteria.
Just projects should fit within the picture. Like this circulation connections. Okay, so does the project improve parking impact in existing open space? Does the project bring Harrison side existing prisons? Does the project resolve pedestrian and bicycle traffic combos? Does the project create pedestrian and bike connectivity between major transportation nodes which must serve regular business emissions? Does the project connect circulation and parking outside to areas within the park? Does the project enhance park and advantage? There was a lot of concern in the subcommittee about how people were through the natural. The question pedestrian bicycles conflicts shows a lot. So I think a number of these points way back that it's a way to bring out different paths of
I might just be simple, not understanding, but this second to last one, does the project connect circulation and parking outside the park to amenities in the park? So is this representing, like, if I park at Shake Shack, how do I access the park?
yes, basically.
The businesses not want people using the park, parking in the parking lots?
Sorry, you said again?
I mean, if I own Shake Shack, I would want my parking lot for my customers, not for park users. So why would we be highlighting this idea that we want people to park and someone else's private parking lot to then access the park?
I think that's well, it's payments, and so like, it was being asked for of the community. Yeah, really. Wait, first.
Couldn't we take this one thing and say, how do we work with the businesses to, help, to incorporate them into the park in a way where, if I'm going to Augie's Barbecue, or if I'm going, that there's some connectivity to then the businesses benefit of this circulation. And instead of having this animosity between the park visitors and the private businesses, hey, you're using my parking spots, how do we rope them in to the design so then they see the benefit, because people are coming to their Shake Shacks and they're getting, on a Saturday. So I mean, I think we should think about where people are parking around the park and how they're accessing the park. And then what's the dialogue with the private residents and the private businesses, so they see the value and it's done in a respectful way. And so then and there's a lot of potential value of you coming to the park. I own a restaurant or a CBD shop, and I want to capture it, right? So they should be a part of that discussion, I think. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does make sense. I'm trying to think about the trade, which is Sorry.
Well, in addition to that, not only amenities in the park, but what about the connectivity along the culture? To see them go up and down other McDay, Sama. So not only in the park, but outside the park as well.
Do you think it's reference watch outs? It's can circulate is the which was
I think we're excited back to think about the private businesses around the park and how do we, engage with them.
It feels like fostering that beneficial connection.
those
So I didn't see across any of them, anything about safety, but, and I just want to flag that, and then also the immediate response of safety, about constant lighting. And understanding that the lighting needs to be wildlife friendly, because the mountain drive wildlife out of the park, which is not, or the with the recreation aspect. So just making sure that that's included from their around the park side. Guidelines.
Listen. You know, that'll do businesses feel like they're this. I think that's a question that we had. Find out that we're starting an issue that may not be, because often it's the businesses benefiting and the parking issues come in on the residential side as they're being kind of from my experience.
Question, there's not a group on recreation use. So, and getting kind of to what was said over there about public safety, I also think it's the public enjoyment where there's all these circulation and getting through and getting access to, is we want to make sure that the circulation and connections enhances the recreational use and enjoyment. So, but I mean, it's not only we want to make sure that it's safe, like lighting and all the other things that were mentioned, but also that it's an enjoyable place to be and that it's attractive for people. It's encouraging people to use in a much more, enjoyable way. I don't know what else to say. So I don't know where that goes, but it just seems like we want to make sure that that is in the factors that
I think right now it's kind of split up between there's a lot of land and remote and it's which recreational use has been termed, just
right, make sure that the runners and the cyclists and the ladies with strollers or whatever and strollers do can enjoy the park. So it's the idea of the recreational enjoyment, I think, is important. And then the other thing is we've always talked about the fact that it's confusing. So when you talk about the last one, does the park enhance wayfinding and navigation? I'm assuming that is also about they know where to come in and get out of the park, and because we've said many times there's not even a front door, it's so that's what you're talking about with these kinds of
all over the report. I find it interesting, like we talked about long-term planning, care. I am just saying that across all of this thing. That is all. No adverse effects, the plan is already signed, so try the review worse.
Here, but, and again, like, assuming the part that the trying to cut down, I mean, there's like a verbal on ATV turn, like, we're. Like.
I think that's a really good point. It really goes to master planning and operational considerations. I'd like to jump ahead. I think Salvador finished here. And one of those discussions was all about sort of that's ways that or some of the things talked about, which you all like to look at language, look at the language. It's making me know some of this or do you want to search for me? It's probably really hard to figure out how to make these that way that are working. We can probably reach consensus, but it's a good place. Not everyone can have it. Well, the public would have to wait on prior decisions. That and all of we're looking to get at this in the first public meeting. Actually does give us that prior decision. We're thinking about it as ways to help reshaping so cool. But the first thing is pretty. Other thoughts about priorities, weighting, criteria.
I would also agree that you would. Wait till that. Plus, between using public process to the bylaws, you don't have regulation. Because. Have to make one mistakes.
I would say it's not ahead, so once there's a judgment, let's revisit this question. All right, presentation to the public before maintaining the blend. Just the presentation to the public, also when we actually more evaluating projects. We broke it into corners because in gathering such a period of time in order to approach this productively. But one of the things that I think that's the comments got to today, which is sort of the underlying or things related to different areas, and frankly, there's more that could be done. It's hard to evaluate something, which is as holistic as the park is, to break it apart into four nominal and somewhat arbitrary areas. So my instinct would be, when we're talking to the public, we don't necessarily need to break it out to those four areas. Although when we get to the point where we think that the criteria keep them on their own, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that sports the concept really back to the cultural landscape of the board. I don't want to do the pop and drop like we've been doing. If we stay in these silos from this discussion today, I hear so much overlap between river and land, for example, that it will inform us better that we look systematically at these projects and not just a single project. So I'm in favor of combining some way. Terry Brechtel, Brackenridge Park Service.
Any, I guess, there's only any opposition to that.
I think you have to do a really good job of, breaking down a really big into multiple pieces in the original work they did the costs. So I think that was really useful, like, for you, Terry, and I think that there could be some consolidation. Just so it doesn't feel so overwhelming to the public. People have been about this for months, years. And so we need to make it digestible to the public.
Thank you.
Maybe it's as simple as not necessarily break down in different like physical areas, but cultivate. So then it gets more of a visual than a physical combining work. That makes sense. What do you see? You see like rivermen and land and green. You know, if there's something that's strong cutting, it's on color. I'm also a visual person. I like that, and I think I should match to still a little bit of categorization. There's going to be overlap, but there is some device or dividing between the sections. But a lot.
So think about this.
So what are you asking the public to do once you do this? Have the stickers up or?
We will get to that. Absolutely. Yeah, but I'm gonna go quick. So there's exactly what we are at. Projects with further goals, climate activity, political programs. So it's a job of universe. Really concepts than just flying. Flying, it's because it gets to issues of public health. So this incorporates additional language just to I think more properly right in regards to any so it's current how it's phrased here. Change syndrome. Okay. No, I might take more specific discussions of climate jobs. And part of that is that we did capture a guiding principle understanding vast talent. Roger's been flip flop, racial with the strategies, this pockets, with the first Republican needs, it's just a
Who's next? And this is all good for discussion, so please weigh in here. But thinking about an open house format at the Dawson Family Hall, which we've been at here on December 4th, where we want to review these guiding principles. So it goes back to kind of establishing that awareness of what guiding principles are, what the work has been done so far, establishing kind of an understanding, and then working through the criteria to solicit feedback as we talk from. So we're asking for additional ideas on guiding principles and also the criteria. We want to establish sort of where we come, all the work that you all have done. Make sure that there's a good understanding there and then dive into the criteria, however we decide to do that. And I think our ideas coming into how we would present criteria have changed today, which is great. We originally had kind of talked about some worksheet ideas that have sliding scales. So I think this went to your question around, is this a yes or no? And the answer is no. we're looking to engage the community on prioritization and help kind of guide understanding that these options are weighted and there is a give and take, right? Like that's gonna help us build that framework. So that's sort of how we started to talk through how that's gonna look, but we talked about sheets where people could fill things out. We have the, different areas, different subcommittees, and each work group filling out worksheets, whether that's visual with the color coding, like Sarah mentioned, whether it's a physical worksheet. We are also seeing a digital survey that kind of have these questions and open up accessibility and not folks to weigh in who are not physically at the open. We host it on SA Speak Up. It'll be available via QR code, so we can give that out to folks that have an opportunity inside to respond. They will have an opportunity digitally to respond for longer than just the open, of it open. And then we also have an opportunity for people to speak. So if they want to, whether it's going into a voicemail, whether we're recording it there on site, we want to ensure that there's every opportunity for people to give feedback and weigh in. I think what we've seen here, like some folks want process, right? They want to take home that QR code and put this survey out they want. But we do also talk about committee attendance being preferred because you all are kind of the advocates and have been in the work and can speak to and hear what's going on with the community, what those questions are, kind of work through those in each of the subcommittees. That's at a high level.
So
What else?
Rich, last put together some of our homework for figuring out if it included that. Oh, sorry, so you.
Overall timeline, we're working on that survey language in collaboration with you all, worksheets, or whatever kind of vehicle we're going to use that feedback. Know that we are working on media materials. We are inviting local news out to encourage attendance at this open house and also cover it. So we're working on media materials. We have a holiday break in there, and then just to show kind of our process on as they speak of survey and development. We'll have our idea for how we engage at the open house, finalize next 12/1, and then here we go. So 5 to 7:30 is what we're looking at for the open house. Do you want to wait on anything? Okay. So the time on the last flash, the open house being 5:30 to 7. So one of them, yes, right. One of them. Yeah, and we can work with that. It's either 5 or 5:30. Can't get that out to everybody.
Did any of you participate in the last series of meetings of hours? If you're involved,
I was in attendance just for the meetings.
so they were conscious. There was an opportunity for good feedback opportunities. If you're gonna do this on board week, that was out today. Okay, not the day before, because it just keeps going back to that we don't want to do. Right, there are a lot of people that were allowed to be part of this group and were not allowed to be part of it. I still get phone calls on a weekly basis about what's going on, and I think if you're serious about wanting community input, you got to be very deliberate, very intentional. Yeah, and you gotta make it. When I started with everybody, I would tell you that I would not have anybody because that just brings back a nightmare of what it was. Let's go someplace new, it's new. Let's just, and I just really have to. There are a lot of people that are still not very happy, and we're not the average people. Yeah, I got it.
To that point, the week is actually not spurred. So if you have better locations,
A stupid little thing. We're doing that facilitation, it did not happen last time.
yeah.
But I sort of.
Sure, yeah, and that's the feedback we need to hear, so I appreciate that. And then I want to address too, like, it's a very good point in terms of, folks who maybe can't make it to the open house or that time frame doesn't work, so we do want to be intentional about a digital opportunity, and that exists for longer than one night. So longer than just an open house.
I think as they speak up is a great tool. When I see the amount of participation from neighborhoods, at regular meetings, we were doing this how long I want.
Yeah.
But we do a lot of obviously one is to bring constantly making certain changes. And you're very proud of it, but
That's great.
yeah, there's a lot of like tools.
Yes.
You put it on Zoom.
Oh, sure. Yes, yes. And we plan to, record some chat, and then we'll also have recording of, camera recordings there too. We'll want to. Go ahead.
That has for the people, what they're out on. What happened, or what's the concern?
A lot of people talk.
Okay.
A lot of people.
All the way to the beginning.
It was just about.
Nice, that's one.
No, like.
It's trust.
Let's go with it. I'm here.
I was just gonna say, it's just worth to, survey that we're gonna launch, we're finding that out.
Yeah, absolutely. So the survey, again, available on SXP can be accessible via QR code. We have a lot of ideas about how it's going out digitally to all of our districts, commissioners' offices. This is going to be pushed heavily digitally for the entire month. So open house is a kickoff, not the be all and end all, which feels really important. We also talked about incorporating it into signage. Just some kind of simple signs that could be placed throughout the park so that people who are actually engaging with the park on a daily basis can also engage with that survey. So it is something too with the shift. I think that open house is the kickoff, not the only opportunity. It's just where we start. So on that front too, and then also kind of every opportunity digitally and signage wise that we can leverage to ensure that the general public has this opportunity.
Right, the council.
Absolutely. 100%, yes. And they have great newsletters. We've got digital newsletters. All of our, neighborhood folks who are going to have access or have a digital newsletter, even a printed one, that we can put that QR code in. There's opportunity to share that. So, yeah.
So. One of our. Put everything. Around and hindsight is that guide. And so that they read the introduction when they stood before someone that said, go to this section first, educate them for what you actually, because guide them and guide them. They're just kind of running around trying to figure out what way we're gonna go. Right.
Right.
And trying to just require.
Yes.
They get how you have it through, not just over to that. Substitute.
It was great. It sounds like just there's a balance between open house and facilitation, right? Of what that journey looks like, because we also want to be respectful of those community can't be there right at back, right? Like, how are we ensuring that everybody is getting the experience and getting those right principles where there's support sheets? We will have a lot of representatives from the partners here to help facilitate that conversation. Because recognize that it's not just like up in your head and hope everyone can weigh in a meaningful way.
I think still.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Right. I'm going to hear from us again what they can expect to see. Okay.
Okay, is that good?
What can we expect? There's really
We are. That's exactly my answer to the first big grant. I don't deal with that. But I can't encourage you all to be there. This is public engagement is something that y'all need to see directly what the public is saying. Because you're the ones who are setting this set criteria. You're the ones who are doing this. You're helping guide. But if you are ultimately very closely tied to a lot of years ago, a lot of thoughts, and they are always, and so it's the job of this to take that input and figure it out, figure out how it fits into the larger pictures, being the pictures. So
It's your job and the other people here always to be to help us get there too, because if you're listening to what that you're in the city and others have said, is that in this public engagement, it's not public engagement if we're just doing open there has to be very, apparently, obviously, there's some frustration. And if people are allowed to, voice that frustration in a public setting, we'll never look past that. And so there's no reason why I would want to as a committee member. The further we get along, and we're kind of not being authentic about our engagement, then it's gonna be hard for me to sit there and watch. Right? But if we're doing everything ahead of time and we're like, yes, we're gonna hear them, we're gonna do everything we can not to repeat the same mistakes that we've been making with public engagement in San Antonio. We're gonna be authentic about it. We're gonna take the hit that we have to, we're gonna learn from how we speak medicine, and move forward. I want to be part of that part.
So I could not this project, when I saw the RFP for stuff, I was delighted because there was too much next to the direct loss of public trust, what things to have. What is different about all this choices is that, especially when it's public engagement portion, it is to ask people what they care about, so that it can holistically and dramatically change. That's the point. We're not bringing forward a project and saying, do you like it? No, no, would you like to change it? You don't think it's the project. That's a reality of public engagement. A lot of times projects happen anyway. That's not our approach. We are building this. You are representatives of the public. So that's how I see construction working. If the public says things, I can create an example which they will bring up, and that's not pretty far. And we hear that uniformly from the public. It is hard to take that and think and decide what makes sense to create in this process, if there is.
Right on, I share his concerns about people being, because I went to all those meetings at Wheaton, and I'm concerned that people, if they just come in and go to an open house and there's not a forum, I think that could stir up some, concerns. Now, there is still a lawsuit going on over here, so that's always something that we have to figure out if this is, so I'm sort of thinking out loud here, but I'm wondering, to get to the point that you're saying, Jay, what if you had at the beginning of this, a panel of some of the members that sat, one representative from each of those subcommittees, and it's a facilitated conversation, and you ask some questions and say, okay, reformatting this, we listened, we understand, let's talk about what these members have been engaged in and what their thoughts are. This is why we came up with what we came up with. We want to hear your feedback. It's not the city, it's not BPC, it's these members here that have given their time and attention that have this panel discussion first. And then, then you have the open house to say, please go around and look at the work we've done, panel members, and give us your feedback, participate in this survey. So you're sort of taking you're kind of, you're recognizing exactly what you said, and that this is a shift in the process.
Yep.
I don't know, it's just an idea.
Sure.
Because then it's not a government-driven process, it's a citizens-driven process. If they're willing to, put themselves out there, that would be an opportunity to set the course and then go into the public.
Truly, and I like that idea. I think we're definitely, it's a great idea. And we had talked about kind of in what that agenda looks like, making sure that there is some grounding language and who better to deliver. Like who better to sort of share where we have come from than our this committee here. And also knowing that planning on kind of recording that as well, so that conversation, that panel, that grounding language is available to folks who can't be there that evening.
And are we set on the December 4th date? Is that, I'm just worried that we're hurrying this up and not having the time to get the notice out to people, like you were suggesting, go out now, Thanksgiving and everything else. Is that date set, or is there,
we're ready to go. Once we have that, I think Prince on.
Yeah, we waited in favor. Was it Joe?
Just kind of thing. Still don't call it all the house. Like I'm commercial holiday, not next for either. It's like, you know, for something a little bit more. So fun. Sort of, but maybe. It's time, it's harder, speaking along those lines, so it takes a little bit more seriously, and I think that, the idea of the, with Owen Health, maybe give all of us a talk at these little stations. To be there as representatives, and not that we know all the answers, but at least we're there to talk. And people know what the process is.
So what I'm hearing is, thinking about everything on the different days.
So I don't have a good answer to this. The public process. So this mean we keep trying. This point. It's always an evolving process, but on the other side, we have these public projects that lock down, and nothing ever happens, nothing changes. Because either extended the public process and people who care about the project and want the project have lost the energy, and those that are passionate against it have not. And in the end, we put all these public engagement processes down, is the people that don't want the project will stand it. I've seen a project get to the 1 inch in Tobacco, a project that people have been asking for 30 years, killed by one person who humiliated the entire neighborhood, humiliated the council office. We have to, I don't have a good answer, but we have to do a better job of finding out does the public change instead of loudest voice in the room.
So you don't necessarily with the gift perspective, but I bet you need a lot of people. We made there was 3 governor by each table at and they were laying the table kind of randomly. Then there were questions that we were asking. Whatever the topic was. Each spoke really well. People felt like they were supposed to get directly from somebody that involved with process. We were taking care of the meeting of but I think that seems that a lot of positive around that kind of thing.
One of the things I want to speak to, it's kind of a less learned, we talked about it externally. Yeah, but think about how it's public. There's such an instinct to have a panel and a microphone, and the panel is there to listen, not respond, and the microphone is there for to say what they think. And on one hand, that's valuable. It's an integral part of but it's sort of oppositional. And that's something that we specifically want to avoid, going back to the point of the loudest voice room. We think our job is wide range of people, understanding that not everybody thinks the same thing. We will do things to make the accused figure out the rigours this current. But if we compare them where there is us and them, if we accept that, that's exactly what this does. We just got to, and a lot of our thinking of this, I think a lot of y'all, we need to avoid that situation. we're working specifically towards that point us.
But I mean, don't want it. Because we need to be with that ability that we cost someone. Right, up front,
Sure.
you know, so I don't.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. So I wanted to like a general since and what I do. I think that might be very useful that to do that. I don't think the meeting came up in the presentation, but I was thrilled to know that exactly. I'm not. Yeah. Clear pieces. Sure. I think that's a really good idea to help. So we're gonna sit at table, I think that might be the second public meeting, maybe not the first meeting, but I think these are all good ways to bring things in. I think you're right.
One, I think schedule a meeting. Should go to that, we were discussing.
For sure.
And I think just as a reminder, everybody, that the way this he does is they call a public meeting that we're coming with it. Anybody who wants to, it's 2 minutes. Right? That's the model of all the people. So, you know, you get good or bad, that's what these expectations are. Sorry, I can't think of it for. But my point is, in terms of your agenda, that was the one thing that really screwed up the last. Yeah. Was that there was never an opportunity to be funded for. That was all of us that were there. People would just talk out. Right. And then we had the proud band that would stand up and just start talking because nobody was giving a shit. Right. That, you know, the mentality out there for the people that are going to come to this meeting is that they will have out. I think all the services and stuff are outstanding at that. Great. There's something much.
Sure, and I think there's innovative ways, and we discussed that, innovative ways for folks to feel heard, that it's not sort of icky purpose, right? Like there are ways, and that's what I'm hearing. It is essential that folks feel heard. It is essential, right? That not only what is going on or what they want for the future, which is what we're really trying to get at. So heard on that.
What it's called, but 3 years, 3 weeks. Tell them, go to this and continue this work. Everybody writes, already doing. And it's just, I gotta tell you, in my years of facility, it explodes the room. They just love to see the other people achieve this.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you.
See why I do the left. It's part of it. All the way.
Community made,
And more of it's just that's why it's learners. It's still out this. Oh, that area is.
yeah. And that the Kelly, which was the mirror image going south for Highway 90, which now would be the Toyota Park. Kelly could be a better budget. We had, I'd say, a dozen like this, and rates completely dominated by 3 or 4 people that owned houses near Kelly and were looking for money because they heard about Kelly. I think about the Redway access, I think about anything else. So it's it has to not allow the community or a triple leaders. If you're not going to change their mind, you're not going to pacify it more than anything else. But the overall mood is I think it's strong change as much intense as possible. Right.
So when we started, you said you would wrap up in December, and I'm hearing there's going to be a series of public meetings. So what does that do with the timeline?
So just talking about that. So me, when I, based off everything that I'm hearing, what I would like to know is that we don't do the December 4th day. It's a lot of that we're trying to make sure that we're all comfortable with the format of it, both things that are going to be. But in order to stay on schedule, we do like maybe the really second week of January, obviously not the first week, because people get better than experience, but in early the second week of January, then another public meeting in late January, and we publicize that to the community out on the front end, so we go ahead and ask for those dates. For it, that generally keeps the overall stakeholder group work and schedule. But it gives us more time to not rush that meeting and conflict with holidays, all in. Well, feedback. I was seeing the way.
Big accountability, so it's not clear, but here, but. So I have heard, that sometimes the city does not move them to the area that they live in, and it makes it a problem, get them here, and they can't participate. And they might be, maybe a lot, and don't have access to Zoom or whatever, so think about in most people, it might be going to them versus them coming to us. And if we don't know, what we're gonna do is to say,
Feel like we've got our.
So, right, we're kind of defining big, right, that are big enough, what is the thing called, right, coin?
Right, point.
It's a good idea.
Wednesday. Okay. Bigger than there. So, thank you.
all the baby.
Yep. It's not big enough, yeah. AV support for sure, large enough, ease of parking. Okay. Give us. Important, accessible location. Try point. Is us. Not a single. Say that again. Okay. So the committee was scheduled to meet on the 9th, right, second Tuesday. Shoot for that. Meeting. After these guys work out the schedule. 8th is a Monday, 9th is a Tuesday. Then the 30th would be 3 weeks after that, so like the 9th and the 30th. I like the idea that it stays fresh on your mind, you just met, and then you have an opportunity 3 weeks later, I can give additional.
And then you would do the survey in that, in the between, is that what you're thinking?
Correct. Yeah, and again, I think, well, this is again open for discussion, which is why I love this conversation. But it stays open, right? Because it's also important to have access. So it's not just an open one-time method. Make it between picnics, right? The survey is really important. The survey landing page too, the way kind of as they speak of does it, which is beautiful, is there's supplementary material. So if we load Zoom recordings landing page, if we upload links from that person, that will help us in the conversation for the second one. There's a lot of pieces and a lot of transparency, and so that's going to be important too. We can add videos, we can add supplemental materials to help with the understanding, the guided principles, the criteria, whatever we come about, and do on site. We can also bring digital.
So I think our next meeting, we're coming back to you with a collaborative with the run show. Like at a 50% level of draft. Here's what we think makes sense, given what we heard from you all, and then we'll take input and change and fine tune it from there. Basically have the ideas worked out for how this is gonna work, and how things play out to give everybody a chance to really go down and think about. Somebody excited? Anything in particular that you're concerned about? Be sure that we have in the next, at our next meeting.
But yeah, how many things speaking with January 9th?
So there's one in December. One in December.
Maybe December.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
December 12th.
Yes.
Good.
My life.
You already have the meeting.
Yep.
Okay, any other thoughts before we wrap? 4 minutes late. I really love y'all. Deeply, and then it's highly, it's a factory too, it's really fun. But y'all are wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That last minute.
I was the scared they were doing just yes, like that it's yeah, it's just great. But I was going to use it on all right.
Are you?
So. I was gonna bring this.